Final hour overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel. We got Sara Orlesky later in the hour. Jets going for 11 wins in a row in Ottawa against the Sens tonight. No Brady Tkachuk, no Shane Pinto, no Josh Norris for Ottawa. So Stützle, Sanderson, Shabbat, Ullmark, man, they got to have a big one tonight because Ottawa's reeling, man. And you look at it, Detroit keeps winning. They beat Minnesota the other night. You got Columbus. They beat Dallas last night. Boston picked up a point. The Rangers
I think
are
it's
right
going to
there.
come down to the last week, Hazy.
Yeah, I think so.
It really seems like it. Like if you just have a bit of a nap in the last week, it'll cost you the playoffs. That it just seems like none of them are gonna. They all keep kind of doing the same thing, and it's like who can keep doing it. And I don't know Strud. What do you think would be the main factor coming down the stretch for a team that's desperate to get in? Detroit, Ottawa, Boston, the Rangers. Like, is it a goalie? Is it like their star? Like, what's the one thing that they need to get in?
You know what, guys? Honestly, I think health. I think, if they get an injury at the wrong time of the year, you look at Ottawa right now, it kind of rocks your boat a little bit, right? So you look at what might happen with any of those teams. And Columbus has been dealing with a lot of injuries all year, but it's a great story. So I think being healthy in that stretch point will be really important.
Well, that's a big part of it, and that's why, Brady Tkachuk not being available coming out of the break is really significant. I mean, he didn't play over the weekend. He's not playing tonight. They played 6 days ago in that final in Boston. He's still not playing. And there's no real answer on when he's going to return. But you look at the Rangers, who continue to just kind of hover around, and JT Miller, in 8 games as a Ranger, he's got 5 goals, 9 points, 29 hits. Like, he looks revitalized. He looks like JT Miller again. And pretty good deal for the Rangers.
And the other guy's mad at the media in Vancouver.
Exactly. And Pettersson's got 2 assists over that run, and he hasn't scored a goal. And that could be the answer. Like, dude, what is JT Miller going to do for New York?
What a calendar year that Pettersson's put together. I think as soon as he signed that contract, like as soon as the ink was dry, he just morphed into a guy. How on earth does that happen?
It's staggering, man. It's Jonathan Huberdeau-like without having his life turned upside down because he got the contract in Vancouver. Like he's got Huberdeau on this, but Huberdeau, you could understand it to an extent because he was heartbroken. He didn't see it coming. South Beach to Calgary, then he signs a deal, and Flames aren't as good as the Panthers. I mean, there's a bevy of different reasons. Still not acceptable. You need more out of Huberdeau if you're in Calgary. He's had a better year this year. But, I mean, you extrapolate the numbers of Elias Pettersson just in 2025, since we turned the calendar, he'd be on pace for like 4 goals and 29 points or something like that over 82 games. Like absurd numbers.
But you don't notice them. When you watch him play, you do not notice them. Even the Four Nations Cup, you just don't see him. You don't see him doing it. I always thought he had a great
that was
shot.
the best Struddy. Oh, wait till he gets with his countrymen. He'll be rejuvenated and fired up. The last game, I think they
didn't even play him.
No, he played 9 minutes.
Didn't even play him.
But after a while, it's you. It's you, and as a player, you have to own up to it, right? It's sometimes the coach doesn't like you, or your line mates aren't great, or you're playing through an injury. But sometimes you have to look and say, "It's me. What am I doing? What am I doing wrong?" And that's for every player who's ever played the game.
That's it. And I don't know if he's had that internal conversation yet. We'll find out starting tonight in Vancouver, and it looks like Quinn Hughes could be a game-time decision tonight. Dregs will join us here in a moment. Quick strut or dud, because the oven has hit 350. I'm curious where you stand on this, Struddy. Strut or dud that upgrading the goaltending position should be the top priority for the Edmonton Oilers?
I'm going to put it as a dud. I think that Skinner's been there. He's been there.
That's going to be on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
If there's
6 p.m.
I'll be ready for the Jay on right handshake. So to me, the Oilers have seen Skinner perform at that level. And he's done it. He's done it already. He's had many, many playoff series. He's in a down play right now. There's no doubt. I think he sorts himself out and he's ready for the playoffs.
I have to agree, Hazy. The Oilers are going to say, We have to just look away at him right now and say he's going to be ready for the playoffs. He did it last year. We got to hope he does it again, and we got to get another D-man in here. Dude, they're so desperate, and I talked about the watered-down league that it is. They picked up Travis Dermott on waivers today.
Again. Yeah, exactly.
They picked up Travis Dermott because they needed help. Sweetheart of a guy. I love the guy. But he hasn't exactly put it together in the National Hockey League, and that's how they wanted to shore up their left-handed D situation?
Yeah,
Wow.
He was on a PTO with them at camp, signs, sticks around, gets waived, leaves, and now goes back on waivers and they reclaim him. There's other areas that they have to figure out. And listen, you're in it, Struddy. Like, people are pointing at Jeff Skinner, just hasn't worked. Arvidsson's been inconsistent or up and down a little bit, and the money they made, the decisions they made last summer just haven't really worked for them, yet, consistently in Edmonton. But I'm sure they're going to be active leading up to March 7th next week. And here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. When you think Oilers, Dregs, like how do you see them attacking the trade deadline?
This is two for the price of one, because I already discussed this earlier today as one of Struddy's buddies.
Ooh, very nice. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're bound by the cap, no different than the Toronto Maple Leafs or any contending team that, is a cap spending group. So the Evander Kane situation ties in here because, if he comes back before the playoffs, then, the Edmonton Oilers are in one. It's got to be dollar in and dollar out. And, we can all see the needs. Right now, though, I mean, to say that they're in a funk, I mean, that's an understatement, obviously. And every mistake that's made seemingly ends up in the back of their net. When they're playing better, yeah, they'd like to try and upgrade their blue line. They'd like to add another forward, a penalty kill guy if they can. Lots of things that Stan Mullen would like to do, but given his cap constraints, it's going to be a challenge. They've got to figure it out internally, I think, first and foremost, and then see what the deadline provides us in the next 9 days.
Okay. Yeah, it is a funk, man. They're getting beat up. Go ahead, O.
Darren, is there any update in Toronto about Tanev, Nylander with the wrist? I mean, didn't look good him not playing, and Tanev didn't look good leaving the ice.
No. So it was noted that Tanev either left the building or was seen after the game with a sling. And not that tells you anything really, other than he's clearly got something bothering his arm or shoulder. But the news was quite a bit better than I think the Toronto Maple Leafs were even expecting. I mean, guys, we know that Chris Tanev is a tough dude, right? So, it didn't seem like that egregious of a hit by Johnny Beecher, but it took him out of the game. And so there needed to be further evaluation. And the news they got back, I'm told, is better than expected. I don't know the specifics of what exactly he's dealing with, but Greg Berube faced the media and he described it day by day. And, now automatically we think back to earlier in the year where Toronto went through other scenarios, including Austin Matthews, where it was day by day until it wasn't day to day, right? So I'm not suggesting that's the case here. I'm just saying that it's better than they expected. So, anyone who wants to get into the deep dive of, if this guy's even marginal creeping up to next Friday, March 7th, well, they've got to swing for the fence on the defenseman, pump the brakes. I mean, it's still center and defenseman and what is most affordable. And if they get the center they want, then that's fine. They'll maybe sacrifice and add a third pairing D if that player is available. If they don't get the center that is perfect, then, maybe they shift over and they try and add a better pedigree D. So a lot's up in the air, but not because of injury.
So would Brayden Schenn be considered the perfect center? Like, what is your read on their infatuation with Brayden Schenn compared to other possibilities?
Sidney Crosby would be the perfect center.
Yes, exactly. Get him to town, please. I love that idea.
Drags, before you start, if they get pumped one time, he's going to get traded. Like, I'm sorry. He can't keep getting swat. That is enough in Pittsburgh, man. Like, it's not fair enough.
Well, look, I mean, next to Struddy, you'd probably have the best chance of getting in Sidney's ear. So that's, I feel like, where it needs to start. So if you can get in Crosby's ear and say, Sid, you got to chase the cup one more time, then maybe it becomes reality. But that's obviously what has to happen. You know, I mean, that would make things a lot easier for Kyle Dubas if he were able to move out some of his bigger future Hall of Fame contracts. But no, you know, back to the Maple Leafs, and is there such thing as a perfect fit? No, because even if we look at Brayden Schenn, oh man, they love the winning pedigree. You've got the history of Craig Berube with Schenn in 2019 in St. Louis, the fact that he can play 2 center, 3 center, whatever you need. Not perfect in the sense that, you know, he's an older player with a bit of term still left on his contract, but it's $6.5 million. You know, it's not over the top terrible, but he also is a full no trade. So does he want to leave St. Louis? And knowing the winning player character that we think Brayden Schenn is, then I would say, yeah. I was told earlier today that there's as many as 4 teams that are seriously interested. I'm not even going to guess at what the other 3 are because I might be wrong. I can guess at 2. Toronto, of course, being one. But then after that, you guys, you know, break it down. You know, is Schenn a better option given what you're going to have to pay to get him? And it's probably the equal of 2 first-round draft picks. So one of those prospect guys, we talked about on Insider Trading yesterday, Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, you know, somebody like that, Danford, go down the list. And maybe you're first in 26. You know, that gets a little bit hefty. Unless you're sure that he's going to give you your best chance of winning the Stanley Cup. And that has to be what the Maple Leafs are motivated by. This year, next year, we need to contend for a Stanley Cup. So is it Brayden Schenn? Is it Lawton? Who is it? And I think that's what they're focused on.
Dregs, I'm wondering about the Vancouver Canucks. Like, they've already made a pretty big trade, but they got Brock Boeser, who's just sitting there going into unrestricted free agency. They're on the cusp of a playoff spot.
Yeah.
But do they look ahead, or they're going to hold on? Like, what do you get the senses out of Vancouver with the way they're going to handle potentially a pretty big free agent?
Yeah, so you know what? There are 2 guys that are on everyone's trade bait board, and one of them is Brock Nelson. The other one is Brock Boeser. I mean, there are lots of players, don't get me wrong, but when you're looking at expiring contracts, but both kind of fit in the same conversation. That's why I bring up Brock Nelson. It's a difficult one. Lou Lamoriello would love to extend Brock Nelson, but, I mean, Brock Nelson is looking at the reality of the New York Islanders, and he's probably going, yeah, I don't think so. And we've all heard the Minnesota rumblings and the rumors of, you know, him landing with the Wild in the offseason. I mean, all of that is just allegation projector until it becomes reality. So, you know, there's going to be a tough conversation that needs to be had between agent and Lou Lamoriello. Likewise in Vancouver with Brock Boeser, same agent, by the way, and Patrick Allvin and Jimmy Rutherford. You know, the Vancouver Canucks have not nailed down a playoff spot, so that's priority 1. They'd like to think that they've got some juice going into the playoffs if they do that. Well, can they do any of that without Brock Boeser? And, you know, I don't think that he is, well, I'm going to say I know he's not interested in talking extension right now. So is that enough for Allvin and Jimmy Rutherford to say between now and next Friday, March 7th, yeah, okay, we're not gambling on that. We'll roll the dice here. We maybe have enough, maybe we don't have enough, but we need the assets that we're going to get back from Brock Boeser. So, Struddy, we're going to learn that in the next 9 days.
Darren, how long can they watch Pettersson perform? Like, do you think they're still monitoring him, trying to make a call before the deadline that he might go out the door as well? And to follow that, would there be a team that has been watching him for the past year saying, yeah, we'll take everything. The player, the money, the attitude, all of it. Give it to us. We want it.
Well, if that team exists, I haven't heard of that team. I mean, there are teams, of course, that, you know, prior to the latest round and prior to JT Miller getting traded to the New York Rangers, that, of course, expressed interest. And then prior to Mikko Rantanen going to the Carolina Hurricanes, and Carolina was deeply interested in Elias Pettersson. And, you know, they just ultimately changed course and focused on Mikko Rantanen and trade with the Colorado Avalanche. You know, the last couple of games that I watched Vancouver play, you know, it looked like Pettersson was playing a little bit harder, and there was more in his game. And you wonder, he missed the net by 2 feet on that breakaway. If he scores there, is there a glimmer of hope where it changes everything? And we don't know. I did not like the snipe to, I think it was Ian McIntyre, about the media annoys me more than, the lack of confidence. All right, buddy. You're in one. Just figure it out and play as well as you can play, because they're counting on him being their top line center. He needs to be a top player in Vancouver, and he's neither. So they're stuck with him. And he's an $11.6 million cap hit. I can't imagine a team is going to step up front here between now and the 7th of March, unless you're taking a whole bunch more questions coming back and maybe bad contracts and all of that. I'm not throwing this kid under the bus. I think the talent level is there, and maybe that, with a different environment or whatever, he finds his path. But I think that we're probably talking about this in the summer.
With Darren Dreger, what is the actual likelihood that Carolina will trade Mikko Rantanen before
Insane
the trade
you
deadline?
even said that comment, man.
It is crazy, but they got skunked last night in Montreal. The guy he hasn't scored. His shooting percentage is way down.
And all reports from last night were he was a ghost.
Right.
A
playing
ghost out there.
And Rot's playing him a ton. He's playing 20 minutes, 21 minutes a night. It's not like he's sitting at the end of the bench. The guy's playing.
Right.
And he cannot find a fit. They can't score. They can't win. And he hasn't committed to a contract extension.
No. Well, okay, and I've shared this before, and I think that we're all in agreement. How do you make that trade from Carolina's perspective without having any contract certainty? You're not talking about a throw-in player, an expiring contract, or any of that. You're talking about one of the top players in the National Hockey League who's proven he's a top player in the NHL, and you gave up some pretty good assets. Marty Necas is a quality hockey player, and he's delivering in Colorado. So that part doesn't make sense to anyone that I've checked with around the National Hockey League. So automatically you're sitting there going, okay, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And now the way things have gone at Carolina, I honestly, I think that Rantanen is floundering a little bit because of everything that's happened in his life over the past several weeks here. And when he spoke about, not having the opportunity to even really talk discount and what his contract would look like at a discounted price with Colorado, I think that was 100% sincerity. I think he was being very honest, and he is deeply, deeply rattled. And you go from playing for Jared Bednar in Colorado, where you've got, Nate McKinnon going 1,000,000 miles an hour, and all of the offense and how they play the game there, and how Roddy demands you play the game for the Carolina Hurricanes. Well, that is a full shift. And so what Rantanen has as the hammer here is a contract that expires at the end of the year. I don't think that he's certainly not going to tell them between now and March 7th that he's signing or he's 100% going to free agency. Why would he? So do you let an asset like that just walk out the door after everything you've given up? Based on how we've seen the fit or misfit of Mikko Rantanen in Carolina, I'd be surprised if they're not eager to have trade conversation by the middle of next week.
Ooh, wow.
That is so crazy.
They did it with Gensel last year, too. Same thing.
Yeah.
Acquire Gensel and see you later down to Tampa. Go ahead, Strud.
It's crazy, but I guess this is for everyone here, is that, his head is spinning. That is clear. Does the contract, can he even think about signing a contract if everything that's happened to him? I'd be like, you know what?
No.
I understand what you're feeling here. He wants to do it, but I can't even think about signing this. My head is still
I don't
spinning.
care where your headspace is at. If somebody digs up $100 million and offers
He's gonna
it to
get
you,
it.
get your head at what?
He'll get it somewhere else. I know he can only get 7 years, but he'll get the money. He's already made a lot of money.
Okay, then he's already back-channeled. Him and the agent have already back-channeled where he wants to end up then if he's scoffing at $100 million. Which, furthermore, to the point, why would you trade a guy if you know you're not going to lock him up? That is brain-dead management.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Okay, but you're missing a rung on the ladder. They can negotiate a deal where it's a sign and trade, so he still gets his 8 years, which gets him over $100 million, roughly. or around $100 million. And maybe if you're Carolina, you get more coming back because that team gets him for that 8th year. Like that's part of the scenario that could unfold here. Now don't ask me what
I would bet all the money that I got, Darren, that doesn't happen.
Well, I know it's being discussed though. So whether it happens or not, I can't be sure, but that's most definitely one of the scenarios that's being discussed, or at least the player is open to if it gets to that point.
Well, and listen, even if Rantanen doesn't sign there long term, clearly that would be a miss. But the East is wide open, and if he gets his head on straight, it's still a great play. It's an upgraded roster, right? Nichas has done what he's done in Colorado. Good for him. But if you get the prime Rantanen, which we have seen for almost 10 years now, that sets up very well for Carolina to go on a run. And so it could be a scenario where they go on a run, he walks, and they say, hey, you know what? We gave it a shot. I mean, I like the gamble. I appreciate why they did it, but I'm sure they're hopeful he'll accept their contract offer. So we'll see. But the idea that it's even being entertained that they might flip him again, and that has to do probably as much with the way he's fit in, right, Dregs? Like maybe they just don't think he's going to get comfortable in Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it for sure. And I think your point is well made, Brian. We're having this conversation the way we're having it because the trade deadline is 9 days away. That's why. If the trade deadline were 3 weeks away, we probably wouldn't even be talking about it because there's more sample size of what Rantanen has done with the Carolina Hurricanes. So anything is possible, and that own rental theory is legit. And look, I'll submit this, how is that different than Marner other than the longevity of Mitch Marner, being drafted by the Maple Leafs and everything that has been invested, both the player and the team in him. But at the end of the day, you're talking about two coveted potential unrestricted free agents. Well, Toronto's not trading Marner between now and March 7th, right? So maybe that's Carolina's position given the uncertainty and the openness that does look like it is in the East.
Big time. Well, and, you look at these – Carolina's not at risk of missing the playoffs. Toronto's not. But that kind of middle ground in the East is pretty wild. And when you look at what Ottawa's dealing with, they got Winnipeg in town tonight. And there's no Tkachuk, there's no Pinto, there's no Norris. I'm curious how we forecast their game plan between now and next Friday, where there's no certainty they're going to make the playoffs. Yet you've gone this far. You got to get in at some point. The fans are dying for it. Same mentality in Detroit, same in Columbus. But these injuries popping up at a bad time, man. They're losing games. They don't look great. Allmark's uncertain in net. What do you see in Ottawa? What's your read on that situation?
Well, I think they're willing to be patient with the injuries because they know that they're not overly serious. And the information I got start of the week was that Brady would be good to go for tonight. Obviously, he isn't. There was question marks around Pinto and Norris. So, again, they want to make sure that everybody is healthy. And as much as the game matters tonight against the Winnipeg Jets, it's about making sure that everybody is as healthy as they can be so that when you're really deep into that final stretch, wherever that number of games is, that they've got a full complement. And I think it is going to be interesting to watch Staios. Now, the messaging I get out of Ottawa is that they have an appreciation for the experience factor, and they want to see Tkachuk and Tim Stützle and Pinto and Norris and Batherson and Shabbat. Go down the list of all these young guys. Go through the mud here a little bit, earn that playoff spot, and then see what happens in the playoffs, as opposed to spending assets to acquire maybe a rental that helps, maybe the rental doesn't help, as other teams have experienced. And there's a chance that Nick Cousins will come back, and that'll feel like an ad late in the year as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Staios adds some depth, but I think he wants to make sure that his core guys go through the developmental process here so that they're more ready.
Dangerous though, Dregs, because if they don't make it, it's just another year, no playoffs. So it's great to be really in the
man.
It's great to be in the fight, but if they don't get in, ultimately, it's like there's probably going to be people questioning, well, why didn't you try to add to it? And then the final comment's going to be, why couldn't the goalie perform, and why didn't you not get in again? That's just the way the fan base. Yes,
all of that, and then on top of it, and I know fans' eyes glaze over when we bring up salary cap stuff, but Winnipeg, Ottawa, these smaller market teams with that salary cap going north of $90 million, that's tough based on the way the dollar is now. So you do have to take advantage of playoff opportunities, as much as you can.
All right, Dregs, we'll leave it there. It'll be a fun one in Ottawa tonight. Enjoy that game, and we'll do it again soon.
Okay, boys. Have a good one. Thank you.
Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. He makes a good point. Those buildings, the tickets aren't as expensive. They're not making as much money. They're probably not going to be up against the cap in Ottawa, Winnipeg, et cetera. Once it gets to 90 million, 98, 108, et cetera, they got to keep pace. You got to be at the floor at a minimum. But also, you look at where it's trending. Like the second wildcard team might get in with like 90 points this year. Like if you can't get 90 points,
I know, man.
Like what?
Like if you can't get in this year, where you have to take a serious look at your organization if you had aspirations of getting in.
Big time. Like this is it, and especially again, it's Columbus and Detroit, and it's not the same old players. There's very likely going to be some turnover in the NHL this year. All right, Sara Orlesky will join us on the Jets being red hot. Are they playing better now than they did at the start of the year? And what does she expect them to do between now and next Friday?
And Struddy or Hazy, we have to ask Sarah what she thinks of Struddy as a replacement for Noodles.
Okay. She's honest, very honest. She's a professional and a dignified journalist. She will give an honest answer on that. Undoubtedly she will. We can rely on Sara Orlesky. Our best bet still to come, too. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets powered by FanDuel later in the hour. Jets Sens tonight. Ottawa is in one right now. They've been losing games. They got big injuries. Tkachuk is out. Norris is out. Shane Pinto's out. That is substantial. And you got Linus Ullmark in net, and you got the best team in the league rolling through town. You got Winnipeg, who have won 10 games in a row.
Didn't they start the season out 10 in a row or something?
Yeah, they were. I know they were 15-1, which set a new record for the NHL. No one's ever won 15 times in their first 16 games. And that is incredible when you think about it. Over a 26-game stretch, that's more than a quarter of the season. They lost one time. 25-1 over a 26-game span, broken up over the course of the season. But they have been electric since the beginning of the year. And Adam Lowry's back now, and that's significant. And Nemesnikov is, obviously bringing a lot. And he loves Winnipeg, and he's sticking around. And Scheifele's been great. He scored the OT winner. Also, the history book stuff is something I wanted to get into earlier this week, because with Scheifele's OT winner, he, I believe, leapfrogged Ilya Kovalchuk because their record book is Winnipeg/Atlanta, which is absurd, especially considering Arizona doesn't exist anymore. Like the idea that Dale Hawerchuk is in the record books in Utah right now is so stupid. I think Winnipeg should get their original history back. I think they should own that. It should be a part of their history books, and Scheifele should be chasing Hawerchuk and whoever else. I know it's a conversation in Winnipeg, and might as well head there now ahead of the game tonight. Here's our good friend Sara Orlesky joining us back on Overdrive. Can you take us through that, Sara, in terms of how big of a deal that is in Winnipeg, the kind of history books being split between Winnipeg and Atlanta, as opposed to this, run of the Winnipeg Jets and the previous one prior to them moving to Arizona?
Oh, I think you can imagine what a hot topic it is.
Yeah.
And it has been ever since the team came back to Winnipeg in 2011, because you look at the records, and especially I think it'd be different if this had been a team that didn't go back to that original name of Winnipeg Jets. I mean, when everyone thinks of the Winnipeg Jets, you think of Dale Hawerchuk, you think of Timo Solani. You do not associate records with Ilya Kovalchuk or the Atlanta days. So people would love to be able to amalgamate the two. And especially now, I mean, I heard you mention that, they're kind of sitting nowhere with the records, because Utah is its own organization that was, it didn't bring over the Arizona records with it, if you remember. So now no one has them at the moment. So when Mark Scheifele did pass Kovalchuk with 329 goals with the franchise, he said it was great, but essentially goes, there's another one that I'm looking forward to more. And that's a record that he wants to take down. Obviously, his connection with Dale Hawerchuk is very well known. He had coached Mark for years. They were very close. And so he's looking at that 380 goals that Dale Hawerchuk scored with the Jets. That's the record that he really wants. And I think in this city, you always hear people talk about Jets 1.0. That is what they associate with this team. And it bothers a lot of people that the record book does not show 1.0 aligned with 2.0.
Sara, we talked about all the winning, the current streak they're on, how they started the season. Like, you've been around the team for a long time, and I know they've had disappointments, much like in this market, but does anything feel kind of different this year, where this might be a year where you would say, I really like what they're going to do come playoff time, there's just a different feeling about it, or has it all felt the same throughout the years?
Oh, no. I think this could be your year. Oh, you always buy in. This could be the year that they reward you.
Better be.
No, I think that there is. Look, I heard you guys talking about, obviously, the start that they had, 15-1. And yes, it was an NHL record with respect to the start. But I think that even players will tell you there were games in that original stretch that they were fortunate to win. It wasn't as if they were just blowing everybody out of the water. They were lucky to get to that point. But this has been a very consistent team this year. We haven't seen a lot of lulls in it, and it's the way that they've been playing. It is a sustainable style, and they haven't just been relying on Connor Hellebuyck. Yes, he is, inevitably, I think, going to win his third Vezina this season, but they haven't done it all because of him. And sometimes in previous seasons, I think that he has masked some of the issues that the team has had, some of their shortcomings. This year, they are scoring. They are scoring at 5-on-5. They are scoring on the power play. They have been playing strong defensively. You look at their goals against, one of the top teams in the league, and it's not just because of him. This is a team that has bought into the system that Scott O'Neill and his coaching staff have been preaching. A lot of it has been a carryover from that mentality and the ideas that Rick Bowness first implemented when he came in here. And they have just continued to build upon it. This team feels different than what it has in the past.
We all know that goalies and D are what win championships, and it's clear that the Jets have they have a top four. Then kind of their guys Stanley and Miller. Is there maybe a thought to add a little more another player to kind of be maybe include in that top four, top five?
Yeah, I think so. And look, when I've covered the Jets since the first year that they returned in 2011, and I always joke about this actually with Darren Dreger, that every year I feel as if when I was with TSN, that every time I would speak to James at trade deadline, and he would say, "What are the Jets looking for?" And I'd say, "Well, James, they're looking for a second line center and a top 4D."
No, puck moving D.
Puck moving D. You got to have the puck moving element to it.
But find me a team that wouldn't like that. But I think that it's one where, yes, some additional depth is something, especially when you look at how arduous that the playoff run is, right? If they're going to be able to make it, as every Jets fan hopes that they would be able to make it to the Stanley Cup final, to be able to get there, the toll that it takes, how you don't just rely on 6 or 7D. Injuries are inevitable. Styles of game, whatever it might be. And so, yes, do I think that they could utilize some more or use and benefit from some more depth in that department? Absolutely. And I also think that it'd be great if they got a player, whether it be up front on the blue line. I would love to see a player that has had some postseason success and some postseason experience, because look, these guys are playing really well. I think that they have matured from what we've seen in previous seasons. It's not all linear. We know that, in order to be able to eventually get to a cup final. But I think that they have matured. But an area that they still don't have a lot of is postseason success and understanding what it really takes in order to be able to be playing in June. I think that it'd be great to see someone like that come into the organization as well. Also, though, it's that fine line, you guys can attest to better than anybody, that if you have a close dressing room, a tight dressing room, I think that you also have to be cognizant of who you're bringing in, the type of personality that it is, because you got to weigh the pros and the cons when you've got a group that has the chemistry that this team appears to have.
So, Sara Orlesky, Winnipeg in Ottawa tonight. Jets going for 11 in a row. The reaction, I'm curious what the reaction was in Winnipeg last week when Kyle Connor, it was announced that he was scratched for that championship game. We were all floored by it. Clearly, in retrospect, it seems like a mistake. He's had such a great year. How did the Winnipeg market react to that news?
Oh, I think shocked as well. And sometimes, I think it's great to be able to take a look around the league and see how other people in other markets are responding to it, because I think, you sometimes see it periodically in Toronto. Rose-colored glasses come on, and you
What?
don't. That one was for you, Struddy.
I loved it.
I knew you would.
Wow, this is a takedown, man.
All right, we're getting teamed up here. The Western Canadians.
Western Canada, exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
That's why I was brought on.
All right, okay.
But seriously, that sometimes you wonder about what the perception is outside and of players outside the market. And I think that across the board, everybody was shocked to see that Kyle Connor was not in the lineup, considering what he can bring. And even though he hadn't had a really productive first few games there, and you look, his ice time was certainly, he only played, I think it was 8.5 minutes against Canada in that first game. But with what his abilities are, he is a finisher, and he has that goal scoring ability, and to have him out of the lineup, I think shocked a lot of people in the city. If you look at one of the benefits, I guess, that you could say, is that you never know if injuries could have happened, and they will certainly hope that the motivation that I think you saw from Mark Scheifele with not being named to Team Canada back in December, and the way that his season continued to excel, you hope that maybe Kyle Connor can play with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I think the first game back, St. Louis, if I remember correctly, first game after Four Nations in St. Louis, he had 10 shots that night.
Ooh.
And scored. So if this is able to help the Winnipeg Jets longer term, they'll take it. But certainly there was a lot of shock and disappointment over the fact that he wasn't able to play, or he wasn't selected to play for the Americans in that final game.
Sarah, we'll end it like this. Jamie has to leave and do Senators games, and we have to find a replacement. Where would you rank Struddy as replacements, like as far as being funny, just doing the job, all of the things that go into being a substitute for Noodles? Where would you rank Struddy? Now, hang on a sec. Please don't talk.
Good looking, everything, right, Strud? Everything.
Bad hairdo, all of it, Sarah. Like, where would you rank Struddy?
It's not like it's a high bar to be better looking than Noodles. Like, let's be honest.
Hey,
take that into consideration, please, Sarah.
It's not Brad Pitt.
You're going to try to get me into trouble here. I think that it is. I always love being on the show when Noodles is on, obviously, but Struddy definitely is an A+. An A+ villain for it.
Wow, Strud. That's the greatest.
Plus, I appreciate. Look, you need to be able. This show sometimes we know needs to be able to. You guys are going across the country. I know you're a Toronto radio show, but everyone watches you across the country on TSN. You need to
Sarah,
be able to have a little
our
bit of
idea
balance.
about you like the idea of next year a cross-country training camp, like a week-long thing. Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, across the country. You think that's a brilliant idea?
Brilliant was the word I was going to use. Yes. I think it is a brilliant idea. I think it must be done.
Well, that's great. You still hold a lot of power and weight around these parts, Sarah. So the Orlesky push is going to, I think, get us over the finish line.
At the very least, I'm hoping you guys are going to be out here sometime in April or May.
Yes,
maybe
start
it out, show how great it would be, and then you can translate it into preseason.
Okay.
But sir, I just want to let you know what we're dealing with. I was asked a short time ago, well, probably about 6-7 months ago, by Bryan Hayes, if we have Labor Day out west. That's what we're dealing with, Sarah. That's what we're dealing with.
That's a moron comment.
That was ignorant.
You know what? That sounds like a man that ran a casino during university and did not attend many of his classes.
That is 100% accurate. It is 100% accurate.
It's fair. It's
the
fair
casino.
comment.
I was playing the role of a pit boss when we were going through, Western Canadian culture. I missed that day at school, and I need to revise it, and I need to revisit it. And it's great to know you guys have like you responded. You guys get weekends out there and Mondays and Tuesdays.
Everything. Yeah.
It's great. I wasn't aware of that outside of the greater Toronto area, but you guys are really living life out there, and I support it greatly. It's long overdue.
Think of how insightful a road trip for OverDrive could be. Think of what Hayes would learn.
I know. I
just
admit
be a
I'm the guy.
Canadian history trip. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of ignorance when it comes to me. When it comes to what happens basically west of Mississauga, I just don't know what's going on out there, and I hope it happens. And I like that you support that.
Well, maybe it won't just be backed by TSN. Maybe CTV News. Maybe is there like Discovery Channel or something?
Right. The election's coming up, we think, right? We think we're going to have a federal election coming up. So maybe I could be kind of boots on the ground kind of guy and bring Canadians together. I really like that.
The unifying force. One Bryan Hayes. That's right.
Appreciate it, Sarah, as always. Thank you for the support. We need it, and enjoy the game tonight. We'll do it again soon.
I enjoy it too. Thanks for having me on, guys.
There's our good friend Sara Orlesky, one of our favorites. And man, it must be fun covering that team every day. The Winnipeg Jets. They never lose. Never lose hockey games. Just every day it's a positive story.
And people say, sometimes it's difficult to just try to put a different spin on a victory. I'll take that a million times over, man.
Yep. Exactly.
Like just positive vibes. Yeah, could the 3 hours on radio get a little bit difficult if there's not bumps along the road? I don't care. I'll bluff it. I'll fake it to make it. Give me winning all the time.
Because guess what? Sports are cyclical. Those times are coming. It's coming. In 5 years, 7 years, they're going to lose 10 in a row. And you're going to be like, I can't believe this. They stink. They can't win anything. They're not going anywhere.
Well, dude, Hayes, we've been a part of a lot of regular season winning. Struddy, same thing at Edmonton. Guess what? Things churn over. 4 or 5 years, those windows, they'll be back. We'll be back to dealing with just nonsense.
Toronto and Edmonton, the best example. 10, 12 years ago, it was awful in Toronto and Edmonton. Horrible. Right. It was like, what are they doing? They're turning over management again.
Spencer Carberry's going to get hired by the Leafs in 5 years, and he's going to say Payne is coming. That's what's going to happen.
You're probably right. We got to bring him back, and we got to restart. All right, Best Bets powered by FanDuel coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's Best Bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm on the under in the Jets Sens game tonight. Under in that game, and I'm on the Kings money line. I'm going to parlay that. Vancouver, I think, is in tough. They've lost 2 in a row. They could use a win here, but LA, they're really good at home, and LA's sitting there waiting for them, and I just don't like the mojo of the Vancouver Canucks right now. That 2-leg parlay paying plus 181. Today's Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Live game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 19 plus, physically located in Ontario. All right. Well, we got the Raptors in Indiana tonight. They lost last night. You got to think they lose tonight. Always good, always positive, right? At this point, you're rooting for losses with the Raptors. And we didn't talk about the Jays. It's cool to see them playing again during the day. The game was on earlier today, and Scherzer made his debut. Looked pretty good. Yesterday looked pretty good.
Guy's a battler, man. He's an old warrior out there, still grinding away on the mound. Do you have one more quick strut or dud to end the show?
Yeah. Let me, you know what? Let me throw a quick one at you here, Struddy. Strud or dud that the Oilers will still finish first in the Pacific Division?
Wow, there's some recency bias involved in
there's 3 really good teams there, right? The Kings and Vegas. I think the Oilers are in a dip right now. I think they find their way out, and I do think that they will finish first because, quite honestly, I think that's what Connor thinks is best for his team.
Okay, I like that. A Strud based on McDavid coming alive. Yeah.
Are you a Strud on that?
I'm going to dud that, man. I'm going to dud it. I think Vegas, finds a way to smooth things over, and they get to the promised land on top. And but it is a race. Man, LA's been a little bit behind the two of them for a while, but yeah, I think it'll be a great race and very beneficial. Just like here in Toronto, we keep talking about it. It's hugely beneficial to get that top seed, man. Like if you're Edmonton, avoid Vegas.
Yeah, but
avoid
still,
LA.
man, I think it's just you're asking for it if you're just like, we need a different man. Some hungry team that comes out of nowhere that's been fighting for a long time will smoke your ass in the first round.
It's scary. It is. Like the Leafs, you might play Detroit. They haven't been in the playoffs in forever. If they get red hot and get in, or Columbus and their positive mojo and what's going on down there. Nothing's going to be easy. But playing Florida or Tampa, also not easy. Not easy. All right, boys. Great stuff. Good seeing you, Strud. As always,
Likewise,
appreciate
boys.
you doing it. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.